Hello, everyone, and welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. It is Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. I'm Julie Hartman, and it's great, as always, to be with you, especially given that today is Jay-Z's birthday. Now, you're probably wondering, how the hell do you know that? Well, when you go to the workout class that I go to, they keep track of this stuff, and that's how they theme the music. So yesterday was Britney Spears' birthday. I learned this morning that it's Jay-Z's birthday. Hopefully there's another good pop star coming up in the next few days. It really is amazing, by the way, how much more bearable workouts are when you have good music. It can make or break the workout. I don't care if I have so much energy that day or very little energy that day. It has absolutely no bearing on my performance. The music has bearing on the performance. This is why you tune into Timeless for these fantastic insights. Isn't that right? 844-861-5537 is the call-in number, 844-861-5537. And as always, you can use the live chat right here on YouTube. Now, before we dive into some news stories, and then, of course, we're going to be continuing with this great Gospels shtick I've got going on, which is apropos not only because it is December, the month of the birth of Jesus, even though, as an aside, I think it was believed that Jesus was actually born in September, but we've just kind of decided on December as the month. But it's apropos not only because it is the month of December, but also because Daily Wire just came out with the Gospels series, which our dear friend Dennis Prager is a participant in, and he has a really fantastic role. I've seen some of it, and of course I remember talking to him on the phone when he was there in Nashville filming this series, and he said, I really felt like my role was to be an inquisitor, to ask questions, to help the viewer better understand, and to kind of prod the many great intellectuals in the group, including Professor James Orr of Cambridge, Bishop Robert Barron, among others. He said, I really wanted to kind of be the one that was asking the questions that I imagined the viewer would have. And he also said that he really wanted to bring this discussion back to the human element. And that's something that he is absolutely excellent at. He has such a formidable and brilliant mind, but he's always attuned to the fact that it's important to make things understandable on a human level. So please check out that gospel series. But speaking of Dennis, I want to tell you, I've been visiting him in the hospital over the past few days, and as I continue saying, I feel a little bit like a broken record, but it really is worth saying. He so loves and appreciates your prayers. I write to people and I tell them when I've read their messages out to Dennis. I can't do it with everyone, but he time and time again goes, wow, really? He's so sweet and cute with the way he reacts. But I was there the other day, and I wanted to tell this to you because it was a moment that gave me pause. I was there in the ICU, and, ever since I started to go see Dennis, I've kind of gotten used to the other patients there in the ICU. You walk in, and the doors are open in many of those rooms, and you look in, and you see some really grisly sights there of people who have had terrible accidents. There's a guy in there who was in a motorcycle accident, another one who was in a car accident. And, I'd pass by and look at these people, and I've kind of not gotten to know them personally, but gotten to know them a little bit from afar, from passing by them almost every day. And I'll try to say a prayer for them as I walk by them. And the other day, I walked in to the hospital, and there were the same people there, but there was a new person there. And it was a girl who looked to be about my age. Maybe she was a little older. Maybe she was in her mid-30s. But she looked like a young woman. And I stood there, and I was staring at her. And, it sounds weird to be surprised that there was a new person in there. But I just couldn't help but think, my God, this person, when I was here 2 days ago or 3 days ago, this person was out living her normal life. And she probably never thought in a million years she would be here. And then I stood there, and it was almost like for a minute I was hovering above time, looking at it in this very unique way. Then I started to think, who right now is living their lives completely normally, who might be here in 2 to 3 days from now? And so we know that terrible things happen. We know that we know it, but we don't always fully internalize that none of us are immune from the tragedies and difficulties of life. But I can't tell you how stark and eerie it was to stand there. It's especially pronounced when you're there in the ICU setting and you're looking at people who are really struggling to hold on. And it was one of the first times in my life, as I said, I felt like I was suspended above time. And that's certainly something that made an impression on me. And I thought I would want to share it with you because, as I've said, that's the great thing about a talk show. When you want to tell people something, just look at the camera and bring it to the show the next day. But please continue sending in any messages you have at julie@julie-hartman.com. And thank you so much to those of you who have already done so. So a few big news stories we got to talk about today. You know, the first one, boy, this is creepy. I'm sure some of you saw this morning, there was a kind of assassination of sorts in Midtown Manhattan. United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was shot and killed outside of the Midtown hotel at which he was staying. He was there for the annual investors conference for United Healthcare. This happened a little bit before 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. And there was a suspect who, by the way, is still at large in New York City. He was last seen in Central Park, but he was lying in wait. And then when the United Healthcare CEO was approaching the hotel, he jumped out and killed him, shot him from behind. The New York Police Department Commissioner Jessica Tisch said, quote, "Many people passed the suspect, but he appeared to wait for his intended target. I want to be clear. At this time, every indication is that this was a premeditated, pre-planned, and targeted attack." Interestingly, his wife, in a statement to CNN, said that for some time there have been threats against his life. Excuse me, the exclusive statement was to NBC, not to CNN. She said, quote, "There had been some threats," and then she started to speculate why a person would do this. She said, basically, I don't know, a lack of coverage? I don't know details. I just know that he said there were some people who had been threatening him. Whoa. Pretty jarring. People in these high positions have to be really careful. We think that the ones who are the main targets are presidents or political leaders, but people who are running these huge companies, if people don't like what they're doing, they are just as much targets as the political ones. All right, that's the first one, and we'll follow up. This is kind of like a true crime story. I'm gonna try to dig in, and I'd be very curious to see what this individual's motive was, and if and when he gets caught, who this person is. Next story, boy, this is also in New York City. This is a one that I think deserves some of our praise here for the mayor of New York City. Mayor Eric Adams, who has gotten himself into some trouble recently. We know that there was an indictment unsealed a few months ago, which I reported here on Timeless, which alleges that he was taking bribes from political leaders in Turkey. By the way, at the Al Smith dinner, which, let us not forget, Kamala Harris decided to skip this year. President Trump made, I thought, such a funny remark about this. He said, he was like, "Oh, Eric, you spoke poorly against the Biden regime, and then they target you, dear Eric, you'll be fine." And then he said, "For a vegan, I was surprised to find out how much you like turkey." Ba-doom! I thought that was funny, because apparently Eric Adams is a vegan. And also apparently he likes to hit the town. I have a lot of friends in New York who will text me that they're at the club and they're seeing Eric Adams at the next table with some women. So here's the deal. So as we know, Trump was elected. As we know, one of his main policy positions is wanting to deport immigrants in this country. He says that he will carry out one of the largest mass deportation schemes in American history. It's yet to be seen if he is speaking in a typical Trump exaggeration or if this really is going to happen. I anticipate at least something big is going to happen here. But here's what Eric Adams said. He came out and actually said, yeah, this should happen. And I, as the mayor of New York City, am going to support this. Now, he was specifically talking about criminal illegal immigrants. And by the way, that's what I think Trump is going to focus on. I don't think he will, and maybe I'm wrong, very well could be wrong. I don't think that he will deport all illegal immigrants. I think he's really going to focus on the ones who are committing crime. But Eric Adams, in a kind of about face, remember, he was once the leader of this sanctuary city. He was allocating taxpayer funds for food and shelter for many of these individuals, including in hotels. He, as we reported on the show, encouraged church leaders, synagogue leaders, mosques to open their doors to illegal immigrants. He's had enough. Probably because of his indictment. Probably he's like, well, now the Biden regime's coming after me, whatever, I'm going to side with Trump. But also because he's no dummy. He sees this. I've been in New York a lot over the past year, and my gosh, you see so many migrants on the street. The streets are teeming with migrants. It's really sad. I went on the subway, and there was, once the door shut, I sat down, and all of a sudden these little girls get up, maybe about 10 years old, and they start chanting, snacks, 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 snacks. And they're walking around the subway handing out snacks and wanting payment for them. These are poor migrant children who have, I guess, made the subway their home. Let's listen to what Eric Adams said. And crucially, a line that I like is either in this clip or in another one. We'll have to see. He said, quote, cancel me. He doesn't care anymore. He's saying cancel me because I'm going to protect the people of this city. Clip 5.
Those who are here committing crimes, robberies, shooting at police officers, raping innocent people, have been a harm to our country. I want to sit down and hear the plan on how we're going to address them. Those are the people I am talking about, and I would love to sit down with the Board of Czar and hear his thoughts on how we're going to address those who are harming our citizens.
You're open to that?
Open to
hearing what their plan is to deport some of these folks, and you think the city, in some circumstances, should cooperate with ICE.
Let me. You know what's interesting? And I was talking to the team the other day. I want you to all go back and Google Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Google what they said about those who commit crimes in our city and what they said in our country. They said those who commit crimes need to get out right away. That was their position. So this is not a new position, because in the state in the era of cancel culture, no one's afraid to be honest about the truth. Well, cancel me, because I'm going to protect the people of this city. And if you come into this country, in this city, and think you're going to harm innocent New Yorkers and innocent migrants and asylum seekers, this is not the mayor you want to be in the city under.
Pretty good. It's a pretty great statement. It's a little too late. Probably should have taken a harder approach before tens of thousands of migrants flooded into the city, but I guess you could say better late than never. I loved that moment when he was calling out Hillary Clinton and the other Democrats for their flipped positions. I mean, I would even add to that, they were not only endorsing the deportation of criminal illegal immigrants, many of them were endorsing the deportation of just non-criminal illegal immigrants. And by the way, they were calling them illegal immigrants, or even worse, dear God, illegal aliens. There's a speech, I believe in 2008, of Senator Chuck Schumer delivering the commencement address, I think it was, at Georgetown University Law School. And he was talking about illegal aliens. And it's like, now all of a sudden this is a terrible term. So, look, it's certainly nice that Eric Adams is coming to his senses and he's doing the common sense thing, which is to deport people who are breaking two laws, entering this country illegally, and then God knows what else. But I just wonder, why now? This is the question I often have with many Democrats and Republicans, of course, but mostly Democrats. Why now? I don't believe that he just had this awakening moment where he just all of a sudden now realized that this is something that is untenable and unworkable. I think what's more so going on is that he now sees it to his political advantage. The Democrats were decisively defeated in the 2024 presidential election, and we won the House and the Senate. Clearly, many New Yorkers are extremely upset and affected by the influx of these migrants. And also, I do think this indictment has a role to play here. I think this is a jab back at the Biden-Harris administration. Because what happened was, a few months ago, Eric Adams said that it's it's destroying the city. Those were his exact words, the influx of illegal immigrants. And then this indictment is unsealed. Now, I've been very hard on Mayor Adams, if this is in fact true, what is alleged, that he used straw donors in order to get extra foreign and corporate donations, that he took money from Turkish billionaires, business people, and politicians to, among other things, fly first class on airlines without having to pay, enjoying some luxurious stays in some of the top hotels. I've been very hard on him for that. But it does appear that once this indictment was unsealed, there's this war now going on between the Biden DOJ and Eric Adams, and perhaps this is his way of finally sticking it to them once and for all. Saying, hey, you did this to me? Well, I'm going to side with your foe, and I'm going to come out and say that these policies are terrible. Sean, I see you may want to cut in. By the way, hi. I didn't introduce you. I was so focused on telling you it's Jay-Z's birthday.
Hi, Jules.
Hi, dear. How are you?
I'm good. I was thinking that maybe immigrants were getting in Eric Adams' way to the club. Is that what you said? The club?
The club. Yeah, perhaps.
And I know it was a while back, but tomorrow at your workout class is going to be very interesting. I looked up pop star birthdays, and there aren't any. So you've got a choice between Walt Disney and Little Richard.
Who the hell is Little Richard? See, this month, I feel like another month I should really increase my 20th century music literacy. Little Richard. Yeah, okay, I've heard that. That's cute. Well, thanks. I look forward to that. Yeah, I have a feeling people at my workout class like me have no idea who Little Richard is. Maybe we'll go with some Disney music songs, A Whole New World, or some mermaid songs. That'll be kind of fun. All right, next, third news story. Oh my gosh, this clip, you guys, this clip. So right now, the Supreme Court is hearing the arguments in this Tennessee case. The background is that Tennessee, in line with common sense and human decency, banned puberty blockers and genital mutilation surgeries for children, people under 18. And of course, our DOJ, under Attorney General Merrick Garland, has decided to use our taxpayer money to sue the state of Tennessee. They say that their law is discriminatory against trans youth. So this is now being kicked up to the Supreme Court, and right now I'm following live here on the Daily Wire's live blog what's going on. You know, the Tennessee right now Attorney General is laying out the harms of sex change interventions. They're going back and forth, giving a play-by-play of the arguments here. So I'm going through reading here. I'm going, okay, what's going on? All right, Tennessee begins its defense. The ACLU admits people do regret trans procedures. Got it. And then I came upon this line, and I went, what? This can't be real. It says, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, or as Biden called her, Ketanji Brown, whatever. Ketanji Brown Jackson again tries to compare Tennessee trans law to interracial marriage ban. She said, quote, the Tennessee's law is basically doing the same thing and operates in the same way as the laws banning interracial marriages did in the past. Let's see if you can follow this argument. Video 6.
Being drawn by the statute. That was sort of like the starting point. The question was whether it was discriminatory because it applied to both races and it wasn't, necessarily invidious or whatever. But, as I read the statute here, the case here, the court starts off by saying that Virginia is now one of 16 states which prohibit and punish marriages on the basis of racial classifications. And when you look at the structure of that law, it looks in terms of, you can't do something that is inconsistent with your own characteristics. It's sort of the same thing. So it's interesting to me that we now have this different argument, and I wonder whether Virginia could have gotten away with what they did here by just making a classification argument the way that Tennessee is in this case.
Yes, I think that's exactly right, that there is absolutely a parallel between any law that says you can't act inconsistent with a protected characteristic.
Okay, so what they're saying here is, as we just heard, is that they're trying to allege here that there is a similarity between the laws which banned interracial marriages and these laws in Tennessee banning child sexual transitions, because they're saying that the basis is that you can't do something that's inconsistent with your own characteristics. Back in the day, it was, well, your characteristic is white or your characteristic is black. You can't marry outside of those characteristics. Now it's you can't change your gender. Well, there's a big difference between race and gender. Race doesn't mean a damn thing. Not a damn thing. There is no difference between a black person and a white person. There is a huge difference between a man and a woman. I mean, for as long as we have been a country, we have had laws or protections that pertain differently to men and women, because men and women are different. It's why we have separate bathrooms. It's why we have separate sports teams. It's why in the past we've had restrictions on women being in combat roles, because women are far different than men in ways that I don't have to explain to you. And so this is just dishonest here. This is just very, in my view, this is just left-wing crap. I'm sorry. This is just total left-wing crap. Yes.
You may not need to explain it to your audience, but you may need to explain to Ketanji Brown Jackson what a woman is.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, she's not a biologist.
I'm sorry to be so upfront with what I just said, but that is so dishonest to compare this to a ban on interracial marriages. Are you kidding me? You're saying that is in any way similar? The evil laws which said a black person can't marry a white person, and trying to protect children who do not have enough of a understanding of the world and their condition to make this permanent decision, which would harm their ability to have sexual pleasure for the rest of their lives, which would prohibit them from reproducing in many cases, which would mutilate the healthy tissue in their bodies. You're telling me that is somehow similar? Yeah, it is left-wing crap. It's obscene. Oh my gosh. And for this to come from our highest office here, a Supreme Court justice is trying to argue this? Are you kidding? What I would like to know is, are these people willing to do this to their children? If one of them has a child who's 12 years old or 13 years old and goes, "Mommy, I want to cut off my breasts," would you allow that? Ketanji Brown Jackson? Would you? Maybe she would. Maybe I'm wrong and kind of hinting at here that she wouldn't. But this is so bad. I mean, we look back at slavery and we think, oh my gosh, how could we as a country ever do that? I'm not trying to make a comparison here with slavery and genital mutilation. That's like, comparing which illness is worse. It's just a losing argument. But the point is, we look back in history at these awful things that we did and we go, oh my gosh, we're so much more enlightened now. And then now we're living in a society where we allow children to get permanently altering surgeries because of some crazy ideology which only cropped up about 10 years ago. So we're not as enlightened as we think we are. But it's really just so stunning that she's trying to make this argument. It's absolutely insane. And then Justice Sonia Sotomayor, reading here from the Daily Wire, injected and talked about how the transgender procedures can cause irreparable harm on children. Sotomayor said, I'm sorry, counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk, even taking aspirin. There's always going to be a percentage of the population after any medical treatment that's going to suffer harm. These are two Supreme Court justices. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? She is saying here that a 14-year-old girl amputating her breasts and getting a prosthetic penis can be compared to some side effects you may have with taking an aspirin. Let's go to the Gospels. Let's transition to something that will give us a little bit of hope and wisdom. But first, as Sean is signaling to me, I want to tell you about something, as I say every show, that you're just waiting for. I know you are. It's the MyPillow read. Well, here it is. Christmas is coming up, my friends. And right now, with hundreds of MyPillow products, there's something for everyone on your Christmas list. Bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. They have their Christmas extravaganza right now. You can get the flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. You can also get the famous My Slippers. These haven't been on sale for over a year. By the way, they are my favorite product. I wear them almost every day. They're so comfortable. They're regularly priced at $119.98, but for a limited time, you can get them for $59.98. You can also get their 6-piece towel sets, which are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only for $29.98. Just go to mypillow.com or call 1-800-566-6745 and use the promo code Hartman. On top of that, you can get flannel sheets for as low as $59.98, the 6-piece towel sets, as I had mentioned, for $29.98, and they're extending their 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2025. Orders over $75 ship free. Go to mypillow.com, 1-800-566-6745, and use the promo code Hartman. So continuing here with some of our gospel stories for the month of December, and in order to increase our biblical literacy, as I have mentioned, I had some dismal biblical literacy prior to my encountering Dennis Prager. I did not know the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Really. Sean's going, yes, and I was a Harvard student. But we'll put that one aside. It's awful. It's awful how little we know. And as I say over and over, you don't have to believe in this. It's important to know for the basis of our civilization, to understand billions of people who believe in this. I never understood when people would say, no, that's not something I care to read. That's not something I want to know. Really? You don't want to know about one of the most powerful things in the world that has influenced so many people, that could elevate your life, that could give you, at the very least, a new perspective on the world? You don't want to know that? Well, I'm trying to change it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about some of these stories. These are two fantastic stories. So let's think. What did we do on Monday? We did the temptation. That's right. We did the temptation where Jesus is tempted in the desert by Satan. Satan says, well, if you're the son of God, you've been fasting for 40 days. I bet you're hungry. Turn those stones into bread. And he says, man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. And one of my points was that I wish that we as a culture understood this insight, that we are not just material beings, but we are spiritual beings. And specifically with the way that we treat people who are downtrodden and homeless, we have a very material focus on them. And by the way, we don't even deliver it all on that. But we fail to understand that so much of their poverty, as Mother Teresa said, is a spiritual poverty, is forgetting that they are an individual worthy of human dignity, worthy of good treatment. They forgot what it's like to be loved and to be treated as a normal person in everyday society. And so these stories have these magnificent kind of gems or these treasures in there that you can pull out, and they are so relevant to the modern day. So on Monday we did the temptations. Yesterday we did the wedding at Cana, where Jesus turns water into wine. I gotta say, I think that's a pretty damn good thing that the first Christian miracle is making wine. And then also the anger that he showed on the steps of the temple when he went to the temple in Jerusalem and saw the money changers and saw people selling all of these items, and he said, what? This has become so commercialized. This is a house of worship. And we talked about how some Christians, God bless them, truly, think that anger is unbefitting of Christianity. It's unbefitting of being a dignified person. And certainly in many cases it is. A lot of people today shoot from the hip with their anger. But what this story shows is that it actually isn't always a bad thing to be angry. And righteous anger is a virtue, really. And that's another thing I think that we're lacking in society. I don't think that we have enough righteous anger at some things. I see all the time the jadedness of many people when we talk about things like the disastrous COVID lockdowns, which robbed people of being able to be with a family member who was dying, robbed people of their time in schools. I hear when we talk about the Hunter Biden laptop story, how our government lied to us that it was Russian disinformation, or the total lack of follow-up about that guy, Thomas Matthew Crooks, who tried to kill the president of the United States. Remember that? Where's that gone? Crickets. So when people hear this stuff, there's this kind of like, oh, well, yeah, that was bad, or no, maybe that should have gone differently. And it's like, where is your righteous anger? Come on. If our society is falling apart, we have a right to be angry about it, and we should be angry about it. We shouldn't just luxuriate in our anger. We should take action. But I love these because also they are something that you would perhaps not expect of Jesus. Before I knew anything about the Bible, I wouldn't have expected that he would have gotten angry. So these stories are very cool for those reasons. We'll look at two today and the accompanying artwork because I have a fantastic timeless art correspondent named Robert Florzak who helps procure some of these items. The first story is Jesus's encounter at a well with a Samaritan woman. And we see here that Samaria, which is once was a part of Israel at the time of this gospel, it's between Judea and Galilee. Samaria was once a part of Israel, and then it was taken by the Assyrians. Or when the Jews were taken by the Assyrians, this part, Samaria, fell into the hands of other people. And the Samaritans are seen as the enemies of Jews. And oftentimes when Jews would traverse around Israel at this time of Jesus, they would avoid Samaria because the Samaritans and the Jews had nothing to do with each other. They totally hated each other. And so Jesus, being Jesus, decides to go into Samaria with his disciples, and he came upon a well, and he was very tired from traveling, and he sat there next to Jacob's well, as it was called, dating back to the time of Jacob. And he saw a Samaritan woman come up to the well. And so at this point, they're not interacting with one another because she sees that he's a Jew and is used to ignoring Jews and not interacting with Jews and vice versa. And she starts to get water from the well. And Jesus turns to her and says, "Will you give me a drink?" At this point, the disciples had gone to get food for Jesus and for themselves. And the Samaritan woman turns to him and says, "You're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan. Why are you asking me for a drink?" And Jesus answered, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have given me a drink." That's essentially what he says. The direct line is, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. And the woman responds to him and says, "Sir," because, well, let me back up because it may be confusing. What Jesus is essentially saying is, if you knew who asked you for a drink, you would ask me for a drink. You would ask me for living water. And she's understandably confused. She says, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself?" And Jesus answered, "Duh, I'm the Messiah." No, I'm kidding. Jesus answers, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." Let me pause and say on a personal note, that is so true. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still get thirsty, obviously. But what I wish I understood when I was younger and secular and not at all exposed to this is how elevating and enriching and ennobling this is. Mainly because in life, you feel like you have a witness. You feel like your decisions, even if they are difficult and even if they are not recognized, or even if they're not what's popular, have someone who is watching. Dennis and I talk about this all the time on Dennis and Julie. And just to name a few examples, we were talking about how one time I was at Whole Foods and I decided to buy cherries. We were talking about how people steal a lot and how I wanted to buy cherries, and this little package of cherries, I was at the self-checkout, was $25. And the little temptation, I will fully admit, went through me and said I could just kind of toss these to the side and no one would see them. And I swear to God, I thought someone would see, someone would know. I'm not going to do that. Yes, you're cutting in.
Dennis would always say, you see these billboards that say God loves you.
Yes.
And he wishes they would say God judges you.
That's right. That's right. No. And but you may think that may sound like an oppressing thing, but it's not, because you have some kind of way of knowing that your good deeds and your resisting temptation amounts to something. Also, the amazing wisdom in these verses is so incredible. I mean, I think of my favorite one in the Cain and Abel story. When Cain kills Abel, God says, "You killed the bloods of Abel." It's plural. Now, why would he say that? It's because he didn't just kill Abel. He killed every single person who might come from Abel and didn't. I think about another line where he says, "The urge towards evil is within you, and you have the power to master it." There are all these gems, these sources of wisdom that just elevate you and give you a kind of direction in life. And I think what Jesus, not to speak for Jesus, but if I can speak for Jesus, I think what he's saying here is that you will not thirst because you will be fulfilled by the wisdom and the instruction that I give you, instead of kind of going about life in this haphazard, trying to sort it out yourself way. It actually takes the pressure off, really, believing in God, because you know the way that you're supposed to act, and whatever happens is that you kind of leave up to him. That doesn't mean you resign from life, but there's a kind of peace in knowing that maybe if things aren't quite going your way, or if things are seeming confusing, the pressure is off because someone else is in charge. So back to the woman at the well. She says, "Sir, give me this water so I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." You know, she's talking about the living water. And Jesus says, "Go call your husband and come back." She says, "I have no husband." Jesus says, "You're right when you say you have no husband." Ooh, this is some tough talk between them. "The fact is you have 5 husbands." Whew. See, the Gospels are a good gossip sometimes about these people. "And the man you have now is not your husband." And then the woman looks at him and goes, "Sir, I could see that you are a prophet." And she says, "Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is Jerusalem." So she's trying to figure out where she should worship, in the town of Samaria or in Jerusalem. And Jesus replies, "Woman, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. A time is coming where the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the spirit and in the truth." That is a hugely liberating thing with the advent of Christ. Essentially, what he did was he took the covenant that God made with the Jews, with a specific people, and he universalized it. And not only did he universalize it to everyone, not just the Jews, but he put it into the human heart. This is what Christians believe, that you don't have to follow many rules or even go to a specific place to worship. You don't have to be following a specific rule or be in a specific place. And you can, as the Christian tradition believes, have a connection with God. That is a hugely transcending and liberating thing. And then the woman says, "Well, I know that the Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." And then Jesus says, "The one speaking to you, I am the Messiah." And then she goes and gets a lot of her Samaritan friends and brings them back. And Jesus starts to convert people, which is really the start, as we know, of the road. He's going tongue-in-cheek of me, but I don't think it is at all. The Bible features a lot of interactions with women. The first person who saw Jesus after he came out of the tomb was a woman, Mary Magdalene. One of the most revered people, certainly in the Catholic tradition, is Mother Mary. And so this is of significance too, that no one, gender-wise, race-wise, is excluded from the love of God. And that it's universal. You don't have to go into of these stories. And that's what I'm hoping to do here, is to tell you about the modern relevance. This one is so relevant. It's when he was rejected in Nazareth. This one is so relevant. It's when he was rejected in Nazareth. So Jesus comes back to Nazareth, the town where he was born. And by the way, I have a little bone to pick with Nazareth, because when I was there, I got terrible food poisoning. And he goes to Nazareth, and he goes to the synagogue on the Sabbath. And he stands up to read, and obviously there are Jews in the synagogue, and he reads from the prophet Isaiah, who prophesies the coming of the Messiah. I love that, because if you look today, I mean, I see this with Dennis all of the time. The guy speaks truth constantly, and it just seems that the more he speaks truth, the more vitriol he gets. Same thing with Trump, who, by the way, is a exaggerator in chief. I'm not saying that everything the man says is 100% truthful. He wildly exaggerates at times. But it does appear that the more on the nose you are with the truth, the more wrath that you incur. And this is something that is so comforting. It's a and she went off the deep end. And we were just discussing this, and my friend said to me, how do you deal with that? You know, how do you put your face on the internet and say these things knowing that a lot of people think you're crazy? And I said, because it is a fundamental truth of life that if you are doing something good and courageous and noble, or certainly if you're endeavoring to do those things, it is a guarantee that you're going to be get pushback, excuse me. That's the whole story of Christ, and none of us are Christ. But this is literally the Son of God who was sent to earth, as Christians believe, to heal the sick, to help the poor, to universalize salvation and grace. And he was put on a cross. He wasn't believed even by his own. And so that line, no prophet is accepted in his time, that should be a source of strength to people. And again, it evinces the modern and universal relevance of these stories. And so let's look here at picture 1. The Jews in the temple who did not believe him round him up and they try to push him off of a cliff. And this is when he demonstrates his supernatural abilities. He literally just turns back against the crowd, walks through them, and then just keeps walking on his way. By the way, that depiction is one of the few of this scene. There aren't that many, but here he is in his hometown being rejected by the very people that he was coming to help. I hope people who feel like an outsider in what they're doing take some kind of strength from that story. All right, that's it for today, my friends. I hope that you enjoyed this, and thank you so much for joining me. As always, you can email me at julie@julie-hartman.com. I love hearing from you, and I'll see you this Sunday on Dennis and Julie, sans Dennis for now at least, and of course next Monday right here on Timeless at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. Take care. I'll see you soon.